I just finished my 3rd year of running my production company, Leftcoast, full-time. And so it's time for another lessons learned in my 3 years of full-time filmmaking video. And I want to share with you my biggest mistakes and also the biggest thing that I learned, or the biggest thing that went well in 2018. And well, I'll just tell you, I found my voice as a filmmaker this last year, which is a big win.
I should have brought gloves. That would have been smart.
Have you heard of the YouTube trending page?
Wow! Creator on the rise.
YouTube trending page, what's up?
Here comes the fever now.
Good run.
Solid distance.
Well, that was both fun and stupid.
Yo, friend, we made it. Another year of full-time filmmaking. I'm pumped to be here. I'm pumped we didn't go out of business last year, and I'm thrilled to be doing another year in review in the last possible day in January, where I still think it's relevant and legitimate to the last year. But it's great to be sitting here with you, and I'm going to try pull back as many layers as possible, be as honest as I can, and just give you the real details that I don't always talk about in the videos that I make here. So we've got some timestamps going on here, which is going to kind of be my outline that we're going to dive through. But I'd love to hold your attention for the intro at least, and just know at any point, if you have some questions, drop them in the comments, and I'm going to do a follow-up Q&A because I care and I love you. Okay, I've got my laptop here, and we're going to do this podcast style. So we're just going to dive in. Habits of excellence. To those of you that absolutely blew my mind this month, I am so proud. We're going to be doing a massive kind of giveaway episode, so that is coming, but it's January 31st. And for those of you that finished off strong, I'm just so proud and inspired. I'm going to make sure that Habits of Excellence thing becomes a yearly challenge that we do as a community. I might even find a way to do it twice in a year because I think it's that important. And the feedback so far has been phenomenal for those that have participated. There's a lot of you new viewers here following the channel. And I realize most of you probably aren't even aware how long I've been on YouTube or even a little bit about my story. So I just wanted to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Levi. I'm an adventure filmmaker based out of British Columbia, Canada. And my main mission as a filmmaker is to, one, tell incredible outdoor stories. That's the thing. That's why I run my business. That's why I run my YouTube channel, is because that's kind of my main focus. And then my second biggest priority is making education on how I did those things. And that's kind of going to be the values that I'm lining this up against my year in review here. How did I do at that? How did I do at telling great stories and helping others do the same? That's kind of my big focus right now in my life. And that's what I'm measuring this against. But kind of let's do a too lazy, didn't watch summary right off the top, so that way you can get the big picture details. And then we're going to kind of pump into each section with more depth. 2018 went much better than 2017 in almost every aspect. My mental health, my business, what I created, my storytelling abilities, everything about 2018 pretty much went better than 2017. I would now consider my production company out of startup mode. So we're no longer in those super scrappy beginnings, and I'm actually proud of where we've arrived at with it. And this is my production company, Leftcoast Media House, which I spend a majority of my time running, and I don't always update you with on YouTube, which is why YouTube is still only a part-time project that gets the bottom scraps of my attention. And I'm going to be working at changing that in 2019, because YouTube also was the area that brought me the most joy in 2018. So in 2019, I want to find a way to make sure it's not just getting the scraps of my attention, but getting some more proper effort from me this year. One of my biggest takeaways is that you can't have multiple priorities that are the biggest priorities. And that's where I ran up against the wall the most throughout 2018 was I was trying to do too many things. There's kind of 4 key areas where I spend a lot of my time, and I was trying to make progress in too many of them at once. And if I actually want to achieve some of my goals, I need to change the way that I'm approaching that in 2019. And we're going to look at what those 4 areas are and what I think needs to be changing around that time-wise. And the biggest thing I think I'll take away from this year was 2018 was the year I found my voice on YouTube. I've been creating on this platform since 2011. I went into a weekly upload schedule in 2015. And it's finally in 2018 that I really feel I found my own unique way of making videos. The beginning years were a lot of just experimenting and figuring out, how to do the nitty gritty of making a video about yourself and transferring away from the insecurities around having my face on camera and hearing my voice and putting myself out there. And in 2018, I really felt like I found my groove and kind of my style and my voice with videos that I put out like the Slack Life series. I'm really proud of that video series. And I'm proud that, to me, when I watch that, it doesn't seem like anything else that I've seen out there on YouTube. And that's some of the feedback that I'm getting from those that I care about their opinion the most, is they're saying, hey, this is really special that you're making this and putting this on YouTube, and it's got your fingerprints on it. And that to me is huge, because that's what I've been trying to figure out. That's what this whole YouTube journey has been to me so far. Do a full-time job, but on the side, be kind of finding your voice on YouTube. And I really do feel like I found that this year. And that's kind of my biggest win, is I found my voice on this platform. Whew. Okay, let's roll some highlights from 2019, and I'll tell you some of the big moments that kind of happened throughout my year. First up, a big win in the springtime was I held my first adventure film workshop where 5 people came sailing with me, and we had a phenomenal experience. The videos they made from it were awesome, and I'm just thrilled to know that could work, and I want to do more of these in the future. In 2018, I spent over $10,000 on new computers, and that made a big thumbs up improvement on my whole editing post-production workflow. In the spring, I traveled to New Zealand for the first time to do a workshop about adventure filmmaking at the camera store, and Janelle came with me, and we just had a ton of fun exploring and hanging out and meeting new people in an entirely different country. I finally got into running after 5 years of attempting to kind of start the running habit, and it's still growing strong, which is a big win. I did 6 public speaking events. I led 4 workshops. I got a chance to sail on one of the boats from Pirates of the Caribbean. I went on a run with the one and only Mr. Casey Neistat, and we also got to go river surfing in the evening, which was a lot more fun than the run, because it was a blast. It was definitely a highlight of the summer for me. I ended up doubling the revenue of my production company. Again, but the devil's in the details with the profit margin, so we're going to address that deeper in. And to finish it off, this year we managed to paint our Sprinter van, which is total secrets. Like, I haven't mentioned that at all before, but our van is completely painted, and we're diving into the build series, and that's all happening. So 2018 was a really big year of firsts. Oh, and I got my first tattoo, and I really like it, so that's a huge positive. Okay, let's recap on that transition from 2017 to 2018. If you didn't watch what I learned from my year in 2017 video, that might be worth watching to have more context for what we're about to dive into here. Throughout 2018, I didn't change my camera setup at all. I feel like in most of my filmmaking journey, I've blamed the gear I have on why I can't make things that I like, but I might look at switching things up in 2019. But I'm glad I didn't use that excuse anymore. My biggest stress point by far in 2017 was my editing process. I blamed it on 4K, but it was essentially my computer setup wasn't really ready to handle all this footage I was trying to throw at it. And it was interrupting my creative process. It led to what I felt was one of my biggest fails in 2017 was I didn't get my Slack Life series finished or uploaded. And that was a huge creative blow for me in my life as a filmmaker. That was the first time I set a public, loud goal and didn't reach it, which for me was really tough. And I was really hard on myself on that in 2017. And then when I needed to make money for my company, working on the client projects while I was editing, it was just really stressful. There's a lot of nights I was up late just trying to get renders to finish and not crash. I was having a really hard time getting Premiere to be stable on my computer. And going into 2018, this was once I realized that was the highest cause of stress in my previous year, and I actually reflected on the year and went, if I could figure out a smoother editing process, that would change things for me. That made me realize, 1, learning new editing software is probably worthwhile. And 2, I need to just bite the bullet and upgrade my tech, upgrade my computer So in the start of 2018, I learned Final Cut Pro because I've been hearing a lot of really fantastic things about it as an editor. And then I just spent a ton of money on Mac computers so I could run Final Cut Pro. And this is a bit of a risk, and I admit I was close to just going full PC. But for now, I've been really grateful for staying in the Mac ecosystem because the way that Final Cut edits works really well for actually the way I think about stories. So if you look back on my videos from 2018, you might find, hey, it looks like Levi got better at editing and better at storytelling this year. And I have, but I think in part, that's because my ease of being able to change scenes around and just test creative ideas in Final Cut has actually improved a lot, where I'm not having to worry about playback issues. I can move things. I need to make a video basically where I walk through how my editing process has changed in Final Cut. But I'm just basically relieved to know that in 2018, I was able to make better art, better work, better stories, better stuff for my clients, and better stuff for me. And I realized that a friction point and a stress point for me was not editing. Like, not editing as in my computer crashing. It was editing in the sense of how do I tell a better story, that's where I'd love my stress and my turmoil to exist, not necessarily on being bummed by my tech. It's hard to describe the weight that was lifted from my shoulders, but I was basically just able to make better content this year, better stories, and that makes me really proud. Another thing about 2018 is I continue to refine my process of how I run my business. So those immediate things that are pretty stressful, like tax, bookkeeping, accounting, I'm still in the process of developing my systems to work with this, but 2018 was the smoothest year by far, where we were actually staying relatively up to date month to month. It kind of fell apart in the summer, but up till the summer, we were doing really great with the books. And that, as a business owner, that takes a lot of just weight off your back when you actually know where you're at financially and what kind of runway you have going on. Pie chart. And I want to show you just basically where the breakdown of where the rough estimate of where I basically spent my time in my work life during the year. And in the previous year, I made a pie chart and I said that it was my total time just basically alive. So I just pictured a 24-hour day and divided it up that way. But this year, I'm going to divide it up by what I would consider to be my work life. So I'm not including my family life and my friends and relationship into this pie. So this is my work life. The previous year, I said I spent 50% of my time on client work. And this year, in 2018, I spent the same amount of time actually, but I'm going to say it took up 70% of my work life. So I feel like I put about the same amount of effort and total time quantity towards my filmmaking production work for clients that I do video business for. And I, again, don't always share that with you. So the next biggest percentage in here that I care about is 15%, which is to YouTube. And this is really just the scrap leftover attention that I put into making videos like what you're watching right now. And the interesting part is that this is actually where most of my joy came from in the year, but I only spent about 15% of my time on it. So I'm going to touch on why I want that to change in the following year. And then I put 5% of my time towards education. This is things like workshops, teaching, coaching, consulting calls, basically anything related to education or creating courses or doing workshops in person. And then the other 10% is editing my own original content. This past year, I actually didn't shoot much of my own original content. And I want to define what original content is, because original content is why I run my business, which is me as a storyteller wanting to just go out and make stories with my production company that I care about. So this is things like Untethered and the Slack Life series. Those are my biggest original content projects. Originally, when I was getting into filmmaking, I thought those would be things that I try to get on distribution, like the big streaming services and onto TV. But I'm realizing now that those are actually more fun to put on YouTube. So even though YouTube videos, something like this, I look at my original content a little differently from that. And this is projects that I'm actually saving up my own money to go and make and like carve out time on my schedule to go make a fantastic story. And in 2018, I spent way less time shooting original content because I had this backlog from 2017 where I had this Slack Life series I was sitting on. So I focused most of my original content efforts and funding just trying to get the Slack Life series done. So spending money on music and all that stuff and carving out time in my schedule to make sure I got those 5 episodes out. And I did get them out, which is a fantastic relief. So I'm just thrilled by that. And I shot for about a 2-week period on my own original content where I followed Mia to go film her set a new world record in Quebec. But that's really the only original content project that I shot in this year. Let's dive into each one of these sections because I think there's some takeaways that are important for each section. And I want to just make sure I'm being as detailed as I can in a video like this. This past year of running Leftcoast was the first year that it fully blossomed into the production company that I was hoping it would be. The biggest weaknesses still with it as a production company is a lack of strength in sales. So if I wanted to take this more seriously, I need to start putting more effort towards actually courting and working with developing relationships with these larger clients to do bigger projects with. So my sales kind of workflow is not very robust. And then also farming out my work and bringing more people on to help run it as a team. Now, those are two things I would probably want to focus on if I wanted to build Leftcoast bigger as a production company. But what I want to touch on here in this section is that I actually don't want to scale Leftcoast. So I still do it as a solo operation, meaning it's just me and I occasionally have additional shooters. That means that it's a lot of work. I end up doing a ton of stuff to keep my projects going. And maybe if I was a little smarter about it, I would have started to train an editor earlier because I still think editing is one of the biggest strengths I offer to the projects that I shoot. It's the way I shoot them, but then it's the way I piece the stories together afterwards. And great editors cost a lot of money. And for me, because I want to be doing these original content projects and YouTube projects, I've been trying to hold on to as much of the money from projects that I do for clients for each one that I do. That's why I'm able to actually go out and shoot my own stuff is I do all the work and I just work a lot of hours and that's what enables me. But I think if I had found out earlier how to bring more people on the team, I could have started charging more for projects and still had that margin. So that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in running my production company is not doing that scaling to the middle-sized production company well. But for me personally, I'm okay with that for now because I'm actually not trying to grow the client services side of my business much bigger. I'm pretty happy with where it's at and the size of projects that I'm doing. I don't really want to be doing these big ad spots for bigger corporate clients. I've been on some of the sets for those projects and it creates more stress for me. So I don't know why I would want to build a business that pursues those things where if I keep my overhead low, I can have a larger profit margin on some of these smaller projects that actually fit into my niche a little better. In 2018, we doubled our overall revenue. We broke 6 figures for the first time, which is fantastic. That to me was a target that I set a while ago for the business, and I'm really thrilled to have crossed that. Obviously, total revenue actually isn't that important if my expenses blow past the revenue. So if I went into debt last year, breaking 6 figures of revenue doesn't matter. And so thankfully, we didn't go into debt last year running the company. We turned a profit. The profit wasn't amazing, but I was still able to pay myself enough to keep our life going. And some of the decisions my wife and I have made is try to keep our overhead personally as small as possible. So that way the amount of money I pay myself out of the production company doesn't need to be as much. But it was cool to cross 6 figures and not all of that was profit. There was a surprising amount of expenses to running the business last year that I didn't always anticipate, but I feel like I've got a better grasp on what my month to month hard costs are year to year now, which before I didn't even have a reference for what that would be. But I've got a way better sense now for how much accounting costs, how much my insurance, my cell phone bills, basically all the subscriptions for services that I use to run my business. I have a better sense of what those are right now. And for me in Canadian, basically Leftcoast business expenses month to month are between $1,000 and $1,500. So that's kind of just my hard fixed costs just to run the company. And then when I go out on productions, the actual production costs are a little different. Depending on where you sit with running a business, that might sound like a lot of expenses to you or not that much. I mean, for some people, their rental for where they have their studio is breaking $1,500 a month. So it's kind of give and take. I feel like we're on the smaller end of month to month business expenses. My contractor expenses, so how much I'm paying other people, averages between $500 and $1,000 a month. That's just kind of across the year. So when I bring people on to work on my own projects, I don't employ them. I just have them work as contractors per project. And that model has been working really well for me because oftentimes the contractors that I enjoy working with have their own side projects that they want to keep working on. We didn't go on many vacations last year, but we did go on some work trips together that from the outside might have looked like a vacation. And so it's kind of a win-win. So I was able to take Janelle actually with me on some of the projects. Janelle didn't work full last year. She took about half the year off. from working full time, and she started helping me run the company a little bit more, and we went on some of these trips together. And that's a big win for me because that's kind of one of those things that I had promised would come is, hey, if I work really hard on this business, we can start going on some trips together. And I'm not saying that's the end goal as far as having her come on these work trips all the time, but it was definitely a lot of fun bringing her along on some of these projects. And I feel like I'm a better person when she's around. So it was really cool to actually have that happen. Yeah, I wish we had a little bit more profit margin being the first year that we broke 6 figures. But again, I'm just happy that we didn't backslide, that we didn't spend tons of money on gear. So even though we updated all of our computers, I've got an iMac Pro now and a MacBook Pro, very expensive Apple devices. That Apple tax is real. I'm really pumped to have actually ran the business in a way that we turned profit and didn't crash and burn our life. And I feel it's actually sustainable. So if I was satisfied with what I'm doing as a production company, we could keep going on this trajectory and slowly start charging more per project. And this was the first year where the model that I've implemented to build my business really became evident, where, I mean, my whole model is don't accept projects that don't fit in your niche because they'll just kind of drain your energy. Make sure you offer a really clear service to a specific portion of the market. So for me, that's adventure films for outdoor brands. And this year was the year where that just, all of it kind of accumulated to, hey, this actually worked really well. A point to that is I had a lot of businesses come to me this year and say, hey, that video you made for someone else, can you make that but your own version for us? And that's what you want to be hearing. You want to be having pieces of work out there in the marketplace where people see the value in it and they want it for themselves. I don't mean to get preachy to you on this, but it's really cool to have had that work, because someone who says, hey, I like what you did for them, can you do that for us? I go, of course. And then I charge about twice what I did on the previous one. And that's just really cool to have had that model work. That's the wrap up on the production update of this. But I want to move out of doing that much production work. I'd like to scale down my client work eventually to really only spending about 30 to 40% of my work life on the client work. And the reason for this is what brings me the most joy in my year. It's not client work. What I've found has brought me more joy is actually creating my own original films and YouTube content and education. And that's what I want to shift towards doing, spending more of my time on this year. I found I was at odds this year where I needed to do client work because that's what pays my bills and enables me to work on YouTube and basically do education events that don't have to turn a profit. But the problem is that client work uses the same creative energy that YouTube videos and education does, and original content. It's all the same creative energy. And I'll touch on this when I wrap up on my biggest lessons learned from this past year. But I essentially realized that if I want to make more momentum forward in the stuff I do care more about, I will have to strategically cut back client work in 2019 to make that possible. Because in 2018, I thought I would be able to do more in these other areas, and I didn't. And that's a big red flag for me, because I want to transition towards more of those other things that I really care about. So let's do an education update. Actually, scratch that. Original content update. What a massive win for me this year to get Slack Life series out. I can't tell you how good it feels to have failed at something like so brutally the previous year and have won by completing it. But the biggest win was finishing it. And then the second biggest win was actually having my own unique voice in it and finding a way to make it for YouTube in a way that I felt was true to the YouTube platform, but also had some really unique elements to it that I feel set it apart from other videos that are out there. I talk about how I want, when someone watches the original content I put on YouTube, like a Leftcoast original, I want them to feel like at any point this could belong on Netflix, but then suddenly kind of turn into a vlog. And I feel like this year I found that, and I'm really pumped about that. Like 2017 I was a little defeated, and in 2018 I'm like hyped on it. Okay, so YouTube update. After 8 years on the platform, I feel like I've finally found my voice. I think I've found a way to actually get my personality more into videos, and that's freaking out some people, but a lot of you are loving it, and that just feels good. Earlier, I was so preoccupied with what the content was going to be, like actually filming it, but now I've got more creative juices to actually try to get my personality into the videos, which is awesome. Like the Run with Neistat series I did in 2018, it's hilarious. Like running around in pink tights and doing stretching. Like I just love that that's something that I did, and it's kind of got my fingerprints all on it. And to have that series actually have worked is awesome. And I'm really excited about this as well, to know that if you have a full-time job that's paying your bills, in my sense, that's the production company I run, you can still experiment with creativity and finding your voice on the side. And that's encouraging to me. We've just been slow linear growth on YouTube, but it's been happening while I have a full-time job that supports me. So YouTube for me is a side project. I haven't needed to make money from it. I didn't want to force myself to try make money from it too early because I thought that might kill the fun I was having with it. And I still don't even have ads on my video. I experimented for a couple months turning ads on because I thought it would boost some of my videos in the algorithm. That's certainly not the case, and the money I was getting from it didn't feel worth it. So I've axed ads right now. YouTube for me is just a passion thing and just a way for people to find out about me and my work and what I do. But it was encouraging to know that the process I've followed on YouTube has worked. For those interested, it's been linear growth. I haven't spiked massively at any point, even though it might seem like that to those of you that have only found me in the past year. But in the first year that I started focusing on it, I grew it to 3,000 subscribers. And then I basically doubled or tripled it to 10,000 the next year. And then I tripled that to 30,000 the next year. And this year we tripled again to 100,000. So it's basically just been slow linear growth, which I'm happy with. It's been more challenging this year not to compare myself to some of the people that have blown up in way shorter time. That's been tough because it makes me feel like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And I think that's a helpful question to ask, is what could I have been doing better that would help more people find my videos and find them helpful? But I need to just check myself constantly to make sure that I'm not unsatisfied, because I'm completely stoked to cross 100K. That's the only goal I ever set. And now that we've crossed that, it's awesome. I just want to keep making more helpful videos for the people that are already following. And I dread growing more quicker because that means the comments, I just dread what the comment section might turn out to be like. But yeah, 2018, I'm pumped for how YouTube went for me. And I would really like to do more in 2019. That's kind of my plans. I'd love to make more regular content. And I've been holding back, honestly. There was several 3-week periods where I didn't upload at all in 2018. And I was bummed by that. That wasn't my goal. And so to fail at that, to me, is a little frustrating. I've been out of high school now for years, and I've had time in the world to kind of try build my business and do this stuff. And I'm learning more and more the stuff that I enjoy the most is making things for other people. That seems weird to say. I thought I would have enjoyed growing a company more, but I haven't. I've enjoyed making things for people more. So I want to do more of that. And that tails us into the next section here, the education. I made a video called How I Make My Money in summer of 2017. And some of you that watched that, basically in that video, I break down how client work drives my business, but I'd love to transfer over into products driving my business. And what I mean by that is courses, workshops being the main driver of overall revenue. So that could free me up time-wise to do more of my original content, YouTube videos, and so forth. I'll probably always do client work because that's something that's important to me. I don't ever want to become the filmmaker that's teaching people how to run filmmaking businesses and has no idea how to do it themselves. And I do think that there's client projects that I will keep wanting to take on. But I would really like to do more education. It's taken me more time to do this than I thought. And that's a little bit of a bummer. And so maybe that should tie us into what some more of my goals are in this year, which is figuring out that you can only have one biggest priority. And that's been a hard thing for me. That's a hard pill to swallow because I've now walked you through 4 areas of my life that I would consider are very important to me. But at the times where I lacked making progress on any of them, it's because I was trying to do all of them at once. And I'd wake up in the morning without a sense of what do I need to work on next. And that's a dangerous place to be because then that's where I would get lethargic, I'd get lazy, I'd lack drive, I would have days go by where I wasn't productive. And those are super discouraging and I'd start to self-loathe myself. And so I realized I need to be a better boss for myself. I need to more clearly set what do I need to be working on. And that's where coming back to my 6-week project thing of having a really clear identifier of what is the thing I need to accomplish in the 6 weeks. That's kind of what made last year actually make progress. And so going into this year, I'm realizing now I need to cut back on some of the things if I want to move other areas forward. So van life update. We painted the van last year and it looks amazing. It's been a complete secret. I haven't shared it almost anywhere. And the reason why we did this is because we're reconverting the van. So I've had Florence the Adventure van for now 3 years, and I've been traveling and making movies out of it. And my wife and I are now doing our biggest conversion on it possible and making videos about the whole thing. And in 2019, starting in February, those videos are going to start coming out. And it's cool, guys. Like, this is going to be, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a tiny home on wheels. And we might not move into it fully, but we're going to do these longer 3 to 6 months trips and just try to go make stuff out of it. Because even though my wife has been able to come with me on some of my work trips last year, we've been wanting to just go do a trip for us, especially before we start having kids or anything like that. So this is kind of a trip that's really important to us. And in 2019, we plan to go to Alaska in our van. And I'm just hyped for that, and that's going to be coming. Okay, so what do I want to implement in 2019? What were some of the mistakes I made in 2018 that I want to course correct on? And what am I going to look back on at the end of the year and go, wow, I hope I did that. The first one that I want to talk about here is finances. So in 2019, I really want to start investing. We currently don't save anything. We've got an emergency fund. We've got some runway in our bank account, but it's not much. And I think that's a big mistake. But we've been pretty strapped, and bootstrapping this business means that we haven't had tons of margin. And this year I'd like to change that, where I make sure that we're actually putting money away for the future, because I think a decade from now, I'm going to wish I started earlier. So we really do need to start that in 2019, actually properly investing our funds. I need to make sure that YouTube's not my only delivery platform. There's a lot of negativity on YouTube this year, just as a whole, towards the pushback on YouTube and how they handle their platform. And it's frustrating, but YouTube has the right to do whatever they want to their platform because they own it. And it's risky having YouTube be one of my only ways that I have connection with you. Another thing that's important to me to implement this year is having more play time. I've been missing out on that big time. And over the 3 years of launching into my business full time, I wish I played more. And what I mean by that is getting out on a bike, going out and running, doing things that I do just because I want to that have no effect on my business. I wish I did more of that. And this year I want to implement it more. I think it would well round out my lifestyle a little better and help me just be more healthy all around and probably benefit my business. But I mean, that would just be a side effect. I want to make sure the client projects that I do work on with my business have more profit margin built into them. I need to be charging more. When I did my first $10,000 project, that kind of blew my mind. And I thought, whoa, like this is the sweet spot. But what I'm really realizing is that the right businesses have the funds to invest into great video projects, and I need to be charging more. There's some more things that I could probably list here, like trying to diversify my revenue streams, spending more time on my family, personal relationships, building some better habits. But that's kind of the most of what I'm thinking about as I go into 2019. I feel like the work I've put in the past 3 years on this full-time filmmaking journey has led me somewhere, which I'm thrilled about. I say thrilled a lot lately, and that's because it comes up a lot where I'm just pumped that this is working. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that I've been building towards since I was 16 years old, and to actually be working on it full time is such a privilege, and I don't want that to ever be lost on me. I'm so grateful for where I'm at right now, and I'm at this point where I'm getting to think creatively about where and how do I want to build it into the future, because I've arrived at some of the goals I set 5 years ago. And I have these private personal goals that I set about every 5 years-ish. And this year is the last year of a 5-year period that I was focused on some specific goals for me. And it's really cool to be closing in on them. It's cool. It's taken a little bit more patience than I expected, but this has totally been worth it. Harder than I expected. But yeah, it's definitely been worth it. I love working for myself. I love the autonomy. I love getting to create art. It's all something that I appreciate. And the lows can get pretty low. There's no question about that. But the positive mountaintop experiences that kind of break up those low experiences make it totally worth it. If you're one of the people that's still watching all the way through to the end of this video, I appreciate you a bunch. I'm just grateful to have people like you that care about what I'm doing, and I want to serve you better. If there's any questions you have, drop them in the comments and I'll try to address them in a follow-up Q&A video. But that's going to be it for this, my 3rd year of full-time filmmaking wrap up. And remember, life's better when you make stuff. And I'm going to sneak something in here at the end for those that keep watching. But I have a hunch that next year I might title my year in review video a little different. So far it's been lessons learned, my third year full-time filmmaking, my first year full-time filmmaking. But I'm thinking my one in January next year might go something closer towards my first year as a full-time YouTuber or something along those lines. So stay tuned for that. Peace.